Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis. This show is a weekly series called The Network of Global Corporate Control that has been coming to you for the last 2 years from DCTV. Today's segment is live and is called Jigsaw Puzzle. Thanks to DCTV, Carmen Stanley, director and studio producer, Maurice Jackson, audio and prompter, and Kershay Starnes, floor director. We're putting the pieces together. Last week, we talked about country debt and martial law. We said that the secret martial law that was in effect in the U.S. ever since the Civil War in 1861 had ended. There are a lot of views and comments in the archives on YouTube. Enough people in the military remain loyal to the U.S. Constitution and to their oaths to prevent the demise of the United States. This is also since Germany and Japan do not want the U.S. military to surrender unilaterally because of the unconstitutional Federal Reserve notes. A critical mass of people sees through Donald Trump's charade. This includes the U.S. military, over 70% of them, according to my information. Next week, we will talk about avoiding World War III. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Here are pictures of Jose Rizal, the Philippines' national hero. Between December 1942 and September 1946, Jose Rizal became Superior General of the Jesuits as Father Antonio Diaz. Jose Rizal and his lawyer, Ferdinand Marcos, deposited the world's assets in a secret trust named the Global Debt Facility for the benefit of humanity. In 1944, they established the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund to administer the Global Debt Facility. An Egyptian lawyer named Ibrahim Shihada, who was then General Counsel of the World Bank, hired me into the legal department of the World Bank in 1986 after I had written a legislative history of the G77 as a law student in 1977. The G77 is a group of 134 developing countries and forms a cornerstone of the Coalition for the Rule of Law that is overseeing the cleanup of the corruption in the world's money system, using the assets that were deposited into the World Bank in a trust called the Global Debt Facility. We call this cleanup the global currency reset. It's taken a while to tell people the story about what's really going on. This is because there are crooks trying to enslave and kill humanity. These crooks are descended from the Pharaohs and the Templars, and they have combined together in the secret societies and in a large company on the world's capital markets, and they bought up all the media, including most of the alternative media. 3 mathematicians, Stefania Vitali, James Glatfelder, and Stefano Battiston at the Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, Switzerland, identified a, quote, network of global corporate control. And there's a link to their article. This network is often referred to as the banking cartel. The banking cartel keeps on lying and falsifying history, especially ancient history. Humanity, that is, the ones who can still think straight. They're helping to put the puzzle pieces together so that we can clean up all the corruption and replace paper currency for gold in a global currency reset. The number of people who are following me and who understand that I'm telling them about reality have reached critical mass. This means the banking cartel is no longer hidden. And of course, this also means that the banking cartel has now lost control over humanity. This result was predicted with 90 to 95% likelihood from the National War College's power transition model. I've been using social media because the other media is controlled by the banking cartel. The search engines on the internet are especially corrupt. There is massive cleanup work required because the corruption is so pervasive. I have refused to go on shows that will not let me talk about the world's wealth and the global debt facility and the global currency reset. Last week, I tweeted that I would tell people in an unbroken story. In March 2014, Israeli embassies closed. This was because I had sent an email to the Israeli representative and the rest of the board of executive directors of the World Bank. I have put this email in the teleprompter, and I'll give you a link to this email when I upload this segment on YouTube later tonight. Let me read you the email. It was dated March 17, 2014, and the subject is sorry to know on the elbow attack. That's because I was given a karate chop in a synagogue. They were trying to do much worse, but I'm tall, I'm 5'9", so the elbow couldn't reach high enough. But they really got me good. Anyway, so this is what I wrote to Mr. Sadon, who was representing Israel. He represents Israel along with the Dutch constituency because all of the countries are grouped together since there are only 25 executive directors, and of course there are 189 countries that are members of the World Bank and IMF. And what I said to Mr. Sadon, Rabbi William Rudolph mentioned allegations that one of the Jewish prophets was an Egyptian pharaoh. He was referring to my statements. This issue needs to be discussed openly and in the context of the world's gold cloaked in secrecy in the global debt facility that the Bretton Woods institutions are given responsibility for under paragraph 6 of the bilateral Mansfield Breakthrough Successor Agreement. The world is going to plunge into another dark ages if the world's gold, cloaked in secrecy, is not promptly allocated to its beneficiaries. That's humanity. Ibrahim Shihada, former general counsel of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, hired me into the World Bank legal department in 1986, and I was reinstated in settlement of my bondholder litigation in order to bring the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development into compliance and to qualify for the U.S. capital contribution to the World Bank, and then I gave a section of the Consolidated Appropriations Act. And I've got a link to the language there. And then I signed off as acting general counsel. And then, if you could slow down, this is the email that I sent to the congregation Bethel. When I was leaving Bethel after the Megillah reading yesterday evening, a 30-ish man in front of me hit my chin with his elbow so forcefully that I had a headache this morning, and the spot on my jaw is still sore. I have rarely, if ever, been hit so hard. The man whose elbow hit my chin was not putting on his coat. His apology was not even perfunctory. I didn't want to prolong my interaction with that individual for fear of something much worse, so I didn't try to find out his name. You may not know, I have found out recently something that the Black Pope, 33rd degree Masons, and archaeologists who study the pyramid texts know. Moses was Akhenaten. Please see minute 25 and then I've got a link to a video which also talks about this. Families that are given difficult information to process need to stay together as families and process the information. The man who struck me should not prevent that, but I am afraid to come back to shul until I receive another apology. And I never received the apology, and I resigned from that synagogue. Okay, now this is an email that I sent on the 23rd of February, 2014. I sent it to the chair of the Development Committee, and I copied all of the embassies in the missions to the United Nations. Subject: Liu says emerging markets, China risks cloud economic outlook. To members of the Senate and House of Representatives Appropriations Subcommittee on State and Foreign Operations. When Dominique Strauss-Kahn, then managing director of the International Monetary Fund, asked about the gold in the global debt facility allocated to the citizens of the world, he was run out of town. The United States remains a scofflaw and a deadbeat, failing to meet its shareholder commitment on the World Bank's capital increase. This is because Jacob Lew, Secretary of the Treasury, forgot to tell U.S. congressional appropriations committees whether the effects of retaliation against whistleblowers had been eliminated, which is a condition for release of the funds allocated to the capital increase. And this is largely attributed to one of the senators who was honest, although most of the congressional people are not honest. That's Senator Lugar, who was helping me. The 188 ministers of finance on the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF reinstated me as acting general counsel of the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development to satisfy this condition and to settle my bondholder litigation to correct inaccurate financial information to World Bank bondholders, of which I am one. I bought a World Bank bond so I could sue in the courts. Of course, we know now that the courts are all corrupt. Anyway, let me get back to the text. Failure to implement the decision of the Board of Governors to replace fractional reserve fiat currency with sound currency is lowering the U.S. credit rating as well as the World Bank credit rating and bringing the world to the precipice of a new dark ages. Now I'm changing the subject. It's important to sequence properly. This means that it's very important not to get bogged down and divided in a debate about religion. There's plenty of time to talk about religion. This is a topic that many of us can discuss indefinitely. That's the whole point. It is not a good thing to be distracted from the cleanup of the corruption in the world's money system by a divisive debate on the world's religions. The banking cartel is doing whatever it can to try and halt the global currency reset. But as we already know from the Department of Defense power transition model, there is nothing the cabal can do to derail humanity. I wanted to show you this exchange of tweets, mostly for the people in my social media on Facebook, since people that access me on Twitter probably have already seen this. I'll also be making this point on DCTV, which is what I'm talking about right now. Why is this important? Humanity will be sorting out Lucifer. The debate brought to you by the cabal is bound to be there to mislead us. We will be tackling religion after we clean up the corruption in our money system. I met on the 21st of May this year with agents of the banking cartel to ask them to concede. None of them would acknowledge that they were agents. However, it was very satisfying to confront them face to face. One of these people had been involved when an Israeli agent gave me a concussion with a karate chop on my neck beneath my chin. Here is an interesting tweet that can give you an idea who I was meeting with. And then in the teleprompter, you can see the tweet. I realize that people would prefer to hear directly what's going on rather than to have to click on various links. I will update you in an unbroken narrative that's now. This is the unbroken narrative. And I'm working on the teleprompter, and that's what I'm reading right now. For now, let me simply summarize what people that are following this saga on the internet already know. One of the reasons that we're talking about what's going on in my social media is that a critical mass of people are working together in a coalition. The proof that this is so can be readily seen because we are communicating back and forth with each other on the internet. It's important to sequence things properly. We are not going to be trying to sort out the world's religions. This is something that's very divisive, and will prevent us from getting rid of the corruption in the world's money system. All of humanity will work on religion once we have cleaned up the corruption and the local areas have issued local currencies. And then, building from the grassroots up, we have cleaned out the corruption in our nations. This past week, I reminded people that Pope Francis and the hierarchy over the Vatican, that's the secret societies, the bloodline families, the Jesuits, in short, the group that I have described many times as the head of the snake, had already tried to steal the world's wealth in the global debt facility, and that I had invalidated this attempt. The Board of Governors that manages the World Bank and IMF has fired the agents of the banking cartel who do not really run the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. That's Jim Kim and Christine Lagarde. They're just impersonating the offices because the Board of Governors is in control, and we are in control. Don't be fooled about the number of people that are part of the coalition for the rule of law that's now of critical mass and working together to clear up the corruption. The counters on the internet are inaccurate. You can tell right away that this is so from the following post on Twitter Analytics. And I went back, and Twitter Analytics corrected this mistake, but it's too late. We already caught them out at it. Donald Trump is harming me and the American people with his lies and his charade. He is preventing me from mobilizing the United States monetary gold reserves during this interregnum in the legitimate government of the United States. Donald Trump is now bankrupt alongside the banking cartel, which is not entitled to interest on the U.S. and other countries' debts because the banking cartel owes us $2 quadrillion. Enough people in the military remain loyal to the U.S. Constitution and to their oaths to prevent the demise of the United States. This is also since Germany and Japan do not want the United States military to surrender unilaterally because of the unconstitutional Federal Reserve notes. A critical mass of people sees through Donald Trump's charade. This includes the U.S. military, over 70% of them, according to my information. Let's talk about an article in The Atlantic and the media. The link on the document was taken away, so I simply uploaded it again on the New Zealand Digital Cloud Service. I also just tweeted it. It was especially telling when I confronted Elliot Cohen for his hypocritical article in The Atlantic about Donald Trump's press, his press secretary, Sean Spicer. After I called out Cohen for his hypocrisy, he revised his story a little, but Cohen still didn't tell people about the interregnum in the United States or about the global currency reset. Cohen is still a liar, caught out in his hypocrisy. Cohen did not do what he said he was going to do, which is to clarify the moment in American history for us. And I have a chart which I'm going to have to read because the teleprompter doesn't do charts. Okay, what did Cohen say? He said, kicking the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff out of meetings of the Principals Committee. No, the actual situation is that Joseph Dunford Jr. has refused the United States monetary gold reserves that General Eisenhower deposited in the global debt facility. Dunford has committed treason. And what did Cohen say? He said there was a dark and divisive inaugural speech. Well, the actual situation is that Trump's inauguration was fake because the banking cartel replaced the United States Constitution of 1789 with a second secret constitution, and the U.S. is now in interregnum. That means we don't have a legitimate government. There is no real divisive U.S. policy in actual fact because the policy of the U.S. on the Board of Governors that administers the U.S. monetary gold reserves is what counts. The U.S. will fulfill its treaties of defense with allies Germany and Japan. That's because there's a coalition on the Board of Governors, and I vote the U.S. shares on the Board of Governors. And I do this with the consent of every single embassy. Not a single embassy has criticized this. And I have also said that I will be speaking for the people of the United States in this interregnum until we get our act together. Now, what does it mean, get our act together? All of the local jurisdictions are going to be wiping out this corruption. They're going to be issuing their own currencies. And we're going to build things up from the grassroots up. And the World Bank is not going to be intervening in any of the nations. We are going to be on hold in peace. This is called the global currency reset. That's what we've been talking about. And the reason why I can tell you this is happening is because, as I said, 70% of the U.S. military know that the brass are corrupt and traitors. And we're not going to be harming any of these people, these traitors. We're simply going to shame them because what they've done is shameful. And we caught them with their pants down. And the reason that you know that this is true, you don't have to read all the documents. Dunford had the chance to rebut me. He had the chance to say that, yes, the U.S. Constitution is in effect. Well, it's not. So he's caught. He's caught with his pants down. Okay. I don't know how much time I've got. How much time do I have? Oh, that's fantastic. Because let me tell you one of the things that's been going on. There are a lot of shenanigans that the banking cartel likes to try to do. But we are in a head-to-head contest with the banking cartel. And who is we? Let me tell you who we is. We is all of you. You'll see in the next week's segment that some people think they can just sit on the sidelines and let the rest of us do all the work. Well, you've got your choice. But believe me, the choice is not brilliant. The choice is either roll up your sleeves and get to work and clean up the corruption, or have World War III. And I can tell you that with absolute certainty because of this very, very accurate power transition model. What it does is it simulates how people will react to various news. And the Japanese and the Germans are not happy about having the U.S. military go AWOL because the Federal Reserve note crashes. That was what the banking cartel thought. They thought we were just going to sit back and let them run all over us. And that isn't what happened. You can see, we've turned the tables. And the way this is all going to play out is we are going to be, first of all, we're not going to do anything like we had in the French Revolution, where you behead people. Because just sit and think about the actual situation. Play it through in your mind. How many of the honchos have been implicated in this treason? If we threaten them, then there's going to be bloodshed, and this is not going to work. It's got to be done peacefully, and there's got to be an amnesty. That's the only way it will work. We will tell them they can't keep their jobs, obviously. There's going to be a lot of sorting out to do, and we have never done anything so colossal. It's obviously going to take a lot of effort on everybody's part, a lot of patience. But one of the hidden things, and the most exciting thing that's been hidden from us, is who we are as humanity. We are actually much kinder and much more loving than people know. That's the reason why we're going to manage to have a peaceful global currency reset. And a lot of people are asking me questions. I tell you what my role is. My role is to be a blabbermouth. I've done many pictures. I've showed you somebody sitting at the switchboard. I'm trying to get the information from the top of the financial system to the bottom. And my role is I'm following on Jose Rizal. Jose Rizal actually did all of the work and Ferdinand Marcos by creating this global trust, which is very real. And so my job is just to make sure that all of the world's wealth benefits humanity. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to clean up our currency. there's not going to be any handout. We don't need handouts. If you have local currency in your local jurisdiction, you'll have full employment. So there's going to be pretty much full employment overnight, just about. And so every single community is going to be in charge of its own community. And as for the police, well, I've been dealing with the police because they organize themselves on the side of the banking cartel. But many police were not comfortable with that. And so there's going to be a sorting out. And there's going to be a peaceful sorting out. There's not going to be any let's get revenge. Because the minute we start down that path, everybody, there's nothing for everybody. So it's going to be very ticklish to see whether we can be communities and work together as communities. That's what's going to be happening. And in terms of how we're going to communicate, well, I put everything up on YouTube, and YouTube is part of the banking cartel, and they're not dependable at all, and they try to erase things. And so I just catch them at it and shame them, and usually the things that they're trying to hide become much more interesting to everybody. So the censorship doesn't work very well. But when people ask me questions, what is actually going to happen, I can't be getting out ahead of everybody, and I can't be telling everybody what's happening. It's going to be building from the grassroots up, and we're going to have to have a smooth transition. It's going to be we're going to be on autopilot until we clean up the corruption. And the corruption is so pervasive. Every single organization has got what I call a gatekeeper in it. That's somebody who's trying to manage it. And in the United States, we're going to have to go back to the Constitution of 1789. And then if we want to have a different constitution, we're going to have to organize that. But it's not going to be simple either, because what you have is something called the I'm trying to remember the name of this organization. And now you see why I have teleprompters, because I do need to be correct in what I say. And when I write a teleprompter, I have a chance to check the facts. But anyway, I think it's called COS. This is an organization that is not going to give you a clean Article 5 convention to get the Constitution of 1789 back in effect. So we're going to have to trust that we can operate with each other in a good fashion until we've got things cleaned up from the grassroots up. And I think you're scrolling because you're trying to get me to the outro, or do I have enough time? No. Okay. I guess we've got some more on the teleprompter for me to read. Well, if you stop scrolling on the teleprompter, I can read it. Oh, okay. Well, I want to thank you for listening to another segment of the Network of Global Corporate Control. Today's segment was about putting the puzzle pieces about the world's money system together. We have learned that just about all the media and search engines on the internet are trying to hide the world's wealth that belongs to humanity. Even so, a coalition for the rule of law has exposed the network of global corporate control, also called the banking cartel. Winding down the banking cartel is going to keep us very busy for some time to come. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudis.